talk a little bit about how budget cuts and changes in policy in Washington are impacting the work that organizations like ISLES do here in the Trenton, Mercer County area, and indeed across the whole of New Jersey. I know there are some folks online, and I think there was a question in the chat already about the EV taxes that we were talking about. Part of the challenges that we're dealing with in this time frame is that there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of information that's moving around that we're all still trying to evaluate and make sure that we fully understand. In the case of the EV taxes, this is something that's apparently been added in, I think, to the legislation that's being debated as we speak now on the floor of the United States Senate, and talking about increases on potentially EVs, but also on other renewable sources, solar and wind. But a lot of these things have been negotiated in closed rooms without a lot of public engagement, and we still don't have all the information that we need to understand exactly what it all means. So we learn more, we can certainly share more, but I would urge you to keep an eye on what you see in the paper and getting talked about in the community. What we wanted to start with tonight is just a little bit briefly for those of you who may not be familiar with ISLES. We've been around for 40 plus years here in, originated in Trenton, and we have to say rooted in our experience of working in the city for 4 decades. And our mission and focus is around developing and growing thriving communities, ensuring that there is a healthy environment for all residents, which they can grow and thrive through education and job training. We wanted to talk a little bit tonight about how our organization is impacted by our work focuses on in education and training, but recognize that if you don't live in healthy, safe, and sustainable community, it's not realistic to be able to maximize the educational opportunities and training opportunities. So our work not only focuses on things like students who need an alternative approach to high school education. We graduated over 1,000 students in our years of providing the ISLES Youth Institute. We also provide training and education in particular job skills, from construction, nursing, to welding and auto repair, and things along those lines. And whatever training and education people want to pursue, we don't dictate what folks ought to study or want to study. We help them find a path to where they'd like to be. But a part of that, as I said, is important to make sure we create an environment where people can thrive and succeed. And that's led us to how we can ensure that homes are healthy and safe. We've become very involved in work around lead paint remediation. We've been kind of leading organization in New Jersey around the dangers of lead paint and how to get it cleaned up. And we're leading that effort around the state of New Jersey. We've also grown from that work to also see the importance of energy efficiency in homes and trying to remove older fuel-based technologies, gas stoves and the like, that can put out pollutants and other harmful contaminants into the home, and move to more modern, more efficient, and healthier types of heating, such as heat pumps. In addition, we do work out in the public space dealing with parks and creating gardens and places for folks to grow their own food. We support over 50 gardens across the city of Trenton, with over 250 families participating in growing their own food in a place where it's often challenging to find a ready and reliable supply of healthy fruits and vegetables. Those are a couple of things that we do. You can always go to our website at www.isles.org and learn more about the work that we do. It reaches into anti-violence work, it's budgeting and economic advice for families, first-time home buyers, developing affordable housing, supporting local businesses. But the thrust of what we want to talk about tonight is how some of the changes in Washington and the unpredictable nature of them in particular that's made it so difficult for agencies like ILES and others around New Jersey to figure out how to best deal with the changes that are coming policy-wise. So to start off tonight, Laura Fencer-Rothschild is going to talk a bit about what those changes are. Laura is our Chief Operating Officer and previously led the Johnson Center, which is our policy arm here at ILES. And we're going to be talking a bit about what's happening in Washington. They are voting as we speak in the Senate on the President's one big beautiful bill. But that's only a first step in the process of some of the cuts that are coming. The bill that's being debated right now is about essentially funding that's going to be impacted through the rest of this year. It's also important that we stay engaged and see what happens in the budget next year. So Laura's going to talk about that, and then we'll also have a couple other speakers. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey everyone. So I'm sure Sean shared that if you have questions along this way, please just scream. I'm going to ask somebody who's in the room with us, if they see an icon go up about a hand, to let me know that there's a hand going up. I do have some slides that I'm going to share to get us started. They are not fancy, so please excuse the lack of fanciness on them, but I'm going to do my best to share my screen here and be able to offer some of these. And so these are the facts. In just a few minutes, we'll have an opportunity. Is it working? Yes.
Can you speak a little louder, Laura, in the microphone?
Okay. That is loud. Hello, everyone. Okay, so I'm not sure if everyone can see or...
You can see it.
They can see. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about where the big cuts that are affecting the work that Sean has talked about, where we are most concerned, where we think it has the greatest impact for the community that we work with right now in real time. So the first is AmeriCorps. So you've probably seen this on the news. AmeriCorps is a set of strategies across the United States where volunteers are paid a living stipend but then receive educational awards later to go back to school to do service work in areas that without them we would not be able to make progress here in the United States. For us, what that means is that our AmeriCorps programs here at ILES and what has been happening in the city of Trenton is that they're doing environmental justice work, urban agriculture and forestry, stormwater management, community outreach and education, and providing they provide future educational awards to people. This is a really critical opportunity for urban youth particularly, as they may not have access to these lines of work or have seen people in these roles, is really thinking about what does this all mean here in the cities where I live, where I work. What we know so far is that there's a $400 million federal cut to AmeriCorps funding. Across the country, that means that there are kind of 1,000 programs minimally. It's impacting 32,000 members and volunteers. Now, these members often are engaged in this work knowing that there's an opportunity for them to go on to education afterwards, and that education award that they're getting is critical for so many folks to be able to even engage in the next step of a learning process, whether that be in an advanced degree or just further specific training. You're going to hear from Othan a little bit, who manages our urban ag team, and he recently completed a beekeeping certificate. Opportunities like that are not available without these education certificates. Here, for us at ILES, what it means is that we have 12 full-time volunteer positions, what they call volunteer service positions, that we're not doing. That, for us, equates to about 30 youngish people, really people of all ages, who are looking to engage. That's probably, you could just shut that off, Sean, and you could just hit the sideline. So about 30 or so part-time folks who would be with us learning about what it means to be in urban agriculture, what it means to do urban forestry, what it means to do climate work, and then potentially have careers in green jobs, which we know, well, this sector isn't necessarily engaging with. We know know that in the long run, it is green jobs are the future of what's happening here in the United States. And definitely in New Jersey, where it's still a priority. It also means that for our IOS Youth Institute, which is our youth build program, where we service 50 young people a year, ages 16 to 24, who have previously been disengaged from high school, meaning they previously dropped out from high school, they will not be able to get credit for their volunteer service or their AmeriCorps education grants that they would have when they finally complete high school with us, which is critical for so many of them to be able to find the next opportunity for themselves in education. And then overall, it just reduces the important climate work that we're doing here. And it must keep going. It also, while we're going to continue to do the service work, it does limit the number of people we can take into our programs. With the AmeriCorps funding, our youth build model will be able to serve an extra 15 to 20 students. That won't happen. And in a time where when we have 50 slots and we have about 125 applications from the county, and then people who are being disrupted for education, it's a challenge. This transitions me to Job Corps. So you also probably have been seeing all the news that Job Corps is closing. Job Corps is in fact closing and has been cut from the federal budget. This means that there are 25,000 young people ages 16 to 24 who are being released from residential college-like experiences for young people who have dropped out of high school. On enrollment, 50% of them qualify as homeless on paper, like in the actual way. Many more are homeless in practice. Meaning they may have an address that they use for a mailing address, so they don't count as homeless, but they have housing instability, they were couch surfing, they didn't have a single home. 25,000 of them will, as of September, be said, sorry, we're closing. So you think about the colleges that closed like overnight, and you had those young people who needed to relocate, but they had been in secondary education and had some other places to pick up. There's very little to happen. And while we don't run Job Corps here at IOS, we do know that this is going to impact us, particularly in all programs with youth build, as we have been asked to fold in without any additional funding and that AmeriCorps funding going away, those who've been released to Job Corps, which are youth build programs. Well, we don't have housing, and I'm going to talk to you about housing in a minute, how we're not going to have housing because of funding. And so it really just means that's a lot of people. We're projecting that it's going to cause violence in neighborhoods, that our homeless rates are going to go up. We know that here in Mercer County, that we're looking at somewhere between 100 and 175 young people who will be leaving Job Corps programs, either here in the state or between here and Virginia, that will be coming back home without a place to be. That's a lot of young people on the streets. So, as if all of those job opportunities and workforce are not enough, another thing that we're focused on and concerned about is the cuts to HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. In the 2026 budget proposal, we're anticipating about $33 billion in HUD cuts. Like, that is more money than I can even imagine, honestly, on a given day. It is going to be and an additional $27 billion or so in rental assistance, like Section 8 programs. So that's close to, not good at math, like $59 billion that has been supporting housing.
Are you saying in the federal 26 budget or the federal 25?
In the federal 26 budget.
Okay, but what about their not putting out the funds for the 25?
Yep, so today, that has been frozen by the courts. I will tell you, internally, we are not getting paid. So even though the courts have said, turn the money back on, we are not seeing reimbursements at the federal level. Because they put everybody on administrative leave at the federal level. And so that means there's literally nobody to process your invoices. So if we've done, so much in housing assistance or houses that we put in our reimbursement forms, because everything's reimbursable, agencies like ours are not getting paid currently. They're not saying what's going to happen. That's like the courts and, right? It's like you're telling a toddler no, and the toddler keeps doing it. It's that kind of situation where it's like we're not exactly sure what that is going to look like yet. What we do know is that the practice, which wasn't used appropriately to stop the funding, the federal government, the Trump administration's team, has now understood what it means to go to Congress and actually stop these grants. And so we're anticipating these cuts being much higher even in 25 and sooner than we thought they would be before, because now they know how to go and they only need a majority vote and they have a majority vote for their houses.
Well, the actual thing that vote from OMB has said is that he simply won't disperse the
Right.
25 funding
Yeah.
when federal 25
Yes,
starts
that's
in
right.
October.
That's right. Yeah.
So it'll just cut it
It'll just cut
entirely.
it. It'll just cut it. Yeah, absolutely. And so like this is what they're planning for. This is what we know will happen. Before then, we're anticipating the same thing will happen. We're anticipating what he's projected into the 26 budget is what we will actually see in 25 also, given that information. It shifts, and at HUD, it does a lot of things. So it cuts rental assistance, which is Section 8. Section 8 also has waivers built into it for home buyers assistance. So you can use Section 8 funding to get people into homes and have long-term home buyer assistance. It has assistance for folks with disability in there. So all of that goes away. We're shifting from state-based block grants to reducing federal oversight. So what they're basically saying is the states have to deal with it. But the state's money was supposed to come from the feds, and the money isn't coming. So anything around housing, we're seeing that we're not anticipating any support at the federal level really for what is low and moderate income housing at the state level right now. In addition, even where they're mandated by constitutional law to provide things like assistance for folks with disabilities or for rental aid for non-disabled folks like veterans who are coming out of the Air Force, they've already put bills in that are going to limit any funding to 2 years of rental assistance. So that means you have a person who comes out of one of the wars that we're fighting in right now, let's just focus on veterans for a second. They are eligible for housing. They will only be eligible for rental assistance for 2 years. We have a colleague who just recently started with us, who just retired from the Air Force. It is going to take him 6 months to have his VA option sent in. So for 6 months, there's no paycheck coming. And then, so rental assistance is, and for folks to catch up is virtually impossible at that point. We know that 2 years is not sufficient support to get people on their own feet and to get, moving in the right direction, particularly with rent as high as it is here in the state. And in other places surrounding us. And then the community block grants, the CDBG, which funds everything from new schools to like new neighborhoods to new roads, like anything that is community-based entered is going away. And then the Home Investment Partnership Program, which is a supplemental partnership for first-time home buyers, will be going away too. So why does this matter? Here, as if those lists were not hard enough, the other thing that we are deeply concerned about is that we know that it will affect first-time home buyers, which is a push that we've been making here in the county to get folks into homes instead of out of rental properties and to turn over vacant properties that exist in the cities that are causing more trouble. We also rely on HUD funding here and our partners in the county and actually throughout the state to renovate homes that families can't afford to do the work, which would then lead to them being abandoned. So things like renovating weatherization, lead, getting inspection, mold, asthma triggers, like all of those health concerns in houses, we are able to tap into HUD funding to support folks who are low and moderate income in getting those repairs done in their homes so they can sustain themselves. So grandma passes away, hands the home down to somebody, the home hasn't been taken care of, all that remediation work. People can't afford to do that, and the single reason we're seeing reported for people walking away from homes is because they can't afford the repairs on them. That it's gotten too far in, and they can't afford it, and so that is an economic problem for the whole community. And then also around tenant education, and there are some laws that have controls around inspections and outreach for rentals that we're concerned about. So the last area that I'm going to just talk about is about the Treasury and the green energy rollbacks. It's important to our work here at ISLES. It's important to our state that we have been fighting for a lot. The federal government has basically said no green jobs, no energy efficiency, no energy infrastructure unless it's like generic energy infrastructure, which includes oil and coal and fossil fuels. So they're proposing to turn back all the tax credits for clean energy and for electric vehicles. There will be no tax credits for any of those services. We know that those tax credits were one of the single leaders to the adoption of cleaner energy in cars and homes, and it's not feasible for families to do who don't have disposable income in order to make these changes that are going to be really health necessity changes into the future. It also has put a toll on nonprofits around the state here and in other states too, where we've been told, well, you can continue that program, but they're not allowed to do green energy work. So then we're retooling to think about, like, how do we support people and doing the things we know are important with also making sure that it's not squarely sitting in green energy, which is, you know, a lot of time and work that isn't doing the work we actually need to be doing in the communities. It also ends solar, hydrogen, clean homes, EVs, all of that is banned from many federal programs right now. So even if you have a federal program that's not in that area, let's say you have a labor grant or there's labor funding coming in, which we do have here, our labor funding is stable at this point in time. It's the youth bid funding, but we are not allowed to trade in green energy jobs with that funding, which is like very backwards for most of us. And, you know, it puts us in a position where we're doing things that we, you know, where we want to be advocating and making sure that we're doing what's right for the community, but also not losing the kind of funding that keeps kids from graduating, you know, that in our case will actually give high school diplomas. So I'll pause there to talk about what the landscape, these are just sort of these three areas. I'll also say I don't have a slide on this, but we do also know that all the community-based violence intervention money has gone away. It has been cut in 25, they did that the right way, they got the vote, they got it kicked out. It will not show up in 26, 27, 28 either. What that means practically is that those are all the innovations that cities and towns are doing to combat violence without increasing police states in those areas. So it's all the community health workers, it's all the ride-along where you're sending mental health people with police officers to intervene. It's our very own street teams types programs, which is a group of community outreach workers who are trained to disrupt violence in the community. All of those programs that are funded through those federal funds go away. Here in the state of New Jersey, that money comes to the AG's office, and all of those programs are not being renewed for next year. So if we had funding from them, they will not be renewed. And those who had funding this year have had it cut already. And so while our funding here at ISLES for our street teams comes from a different location, our colleagues in Camden and Newark have already had all their funding cut. And likely next year we'll all be operating with much smaller budgets as they try to disperse some of the statewide money across the state. So I'm going to pause there because I sort of did the facts and see if folks have questions or. What EV taxes we're talking about? We're talking about tax incentives for electric vehicles. So not the rebate programs; those technically come from the state. But I will tell you that the rebate programs are funded by federal funds, and so I'm anticipating those will go away at the state level also. We just don't know that yet.
Just on the EV taxes and the other taxes we were discussing at the top, I did a little Google search and saw that the Senate version of the bill that they're voting on tonight does increase taxes on solar and renewable projects that cannot definitively prove they have no Chinese parts in them. That's the language. There is a proposal being brought by the Republican senators from Iowa, where there's a lot of wind power, to strip that language out of the bill. So we don't know where that stands. As the EV part, I think the Laura was just saying, the only thing they're talking about is removing the incentives and the supports that exist for EV vehicles today. So it's not, it's removing a tax credit that you can get, so one can certainly argue that's a tax increase as well. So that's where that is. If, I don't know if anyone here has questions, we've got the mic we can share, just so folks online can hear, or if there are any questions from folks online that you wanted to raise, you can put them in the chat. Or if you unmute yourself, we think you can actually just speak through the sound system here and we can hear your question. So you don't have to stand on ceremony. If someone wants to chime in, feel free to do that.
I also see my colleague Stacey Denton on here, so I would be remiss if I did not say that we're also fighting loudly for TRIO funding at the collegiate level. So Stacey, that does not go unrecognized today. That means those are funds that support first-generation families and low-income young people in successfully transitioning through high school into college and then remaining in college to graduation. Stacey runs a great set of those programs here in Mercer County. They're critical to the long-term sustainability of young people in higher education, and they are it is very sad to see that that was part of the conversation.
Yeah, for that to go away would really be tragic, because you see those terrible stories about folks who maybe started college and weren't able to finish and get burdened with the debt, but don't get the benefit of that degree. So the program that Stacy has quarterbacked through the county college so effectively, helps to address that problem and make sure that, we all benefit when folks get better and more enhanced, improved education. So hopefully.
I see a hand up from Carmen. Carmen, do you want to come off mute?
Hi, thank you. Carmen Gates here with the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. I just have a quick question. So I just received an alert that the bill the budget has passed. Have you guys had a chance to look at it to see what funding has been allocated for the programs that you're describing?
And are you talking about the federal budget or the state budget's getting voted on as we speak?
The state budget just got passed too. Yeah, I can speak a little bit to the state budget.
The state budget, yes, okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to the state budget. It's sad. So I will start by saying the state budget depends on the federal budget, so we have to keep that in mind. And they are anticipating, we are still hearing from lawmakers that they're anticipating having to pass a second state budget in about 6 months when they understand in October what the funding is actually going to look like from the federal level. That said, while there is more money in education and healthcare, there is little money anywhere else. So all the clean energy projects have been reduced. The Clean Energy Fund, which is used to supplement some of this electrification, and those funds are going towards other things. What I will say is that while we're not happy about it for sure, the state is faced with having to provide education and healthcare in ways that the federal government used to supplement. And they don't really have a lot of choices. And so the budget that got passed tonight isn't as bad as we all thought it would be, but it does get away. It does go away with a lot of the. Am I muted? Oh my God.
You went in and out.
I went in and out. Okay. Can you hear me now?
We hear you fine.
Can folks online hear me now? Okay. Heard most of what I said. Thank you. Okay. So we have been looking at that federal budget. We know that there are challenges. We know that, for instance, there is more money going into the Department of Transportation, which we're happy to see, but less money going into electric vehicles for single providers. So single owners, like families that might want to buy an electric vehicle car, those incentives were going out. We know that the education algorithm went up a little bit, so our public education is being funded at a little bit of a higher rate, which is great. We didn't want to see cuts there, but that is likely going to be on the back end of federal cuts being huge in education, which ultimately will mean that New Jersey schools will have far less funding because the IDEA special education money is going to be cut, and it will impact the schools. And so I think while the budget doesn't look, it's slim, it doesn't look as terrible as some of us thought it was. I don't think it tells the whole story of what's going to be happening on the ground, and we're not going to know what that is. There's a lot of small, African American Chamber of Commerce, there's a lot of funding for small businesses that we anticipated seeing in the state budget. Had the federal system gone differently, that is not in the state budget. That money is removed now to more essential services because they won't be getting federal reimbursements for those. I'm sorry, I don't have better news there. Other questions?
One other comment.
One other comment that one of our attendees here was mentioning to me, who works with connecting communities to the digital infrastructure, talked about the fact that the One Beautiful Bill, pardon using the actual name, that the funding that had existed for expanding broadband connectivity to rural communities and expanding it to communities like Trenton and other urban areas where there are underserved communities, that funding is being pulled back as well and terminated. That's in the billions of dollars. Some places have been able to spend some of it. New Jersey, we think, has been able to spend some of that digital broadband money, but we don't believe they're able to spend it all. And certainly a number of other states have lost that access, which was going to be something that would help rural and urban folks. within the means of connectivity. We all understand as we sit here and have this discussion in this meeting tonight, wouldn't be existing without broadband. So that's another critical resource that's getting lost.
And we learned in COVID how important broadband is, right? So with all these cuts and the potential for what we understand to be public health crisis is what that will do. All right, so maybe we'll pause on questions for a second. My colleague Otha Caldwell, who runs our urban ag and food services areas here at ISLES, is going to come and talk a little bit about just like what this means for his work and his colleagues' work and his team's work, and then we will talk a little bit about what we can do.
Thank you, Laura.
Well, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. My name is Otha Caldwell. Is that on?
It's on, but you're much
Closer to you so we can hear you.
I love how much you had to increase that. See?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Otha Caldwell. I am the Director of Food and Gardens at OWS. The AmeriCorps funds and cuts sits heavy with me because I did AmeriCorps close to 30 plus years ago. I was one of, when AmeriCorps got started in 1994, and I did AmeriCorps for 2 service years in 1998 and 1999. And the impact of that work that I did was huge on just development for me as a young man growing up. I worked with New York Restoration Project in New York City underneath Beth Mittler, which was a phenomenal program which came into the city to renovate and restore any vacant lot and a ton of old parks that were closed for years due to neglect. One of the parks that we worked in was Highbridge Park up in Washington Heights, up in New York, that was closed for over 30 years. And the AmeriCorps crew, we probably maybe around 40 members, was able to get that park reopened within probably a year and a half of work. The work that the AmeriCorps service members do across all 50 states is crucial. So hearing these cuts, hearing that 35,000 jobs were lost is very, very huge and detrimental to our society and to our state. So this is why I'm here to ask for your support, write these letters. I'm going to give you my 10 reasons why you should write letters of support. You know, my first reason is the cuts reduce service of capacity. Fewer AmeriCorps members means fewer hands on the ground to provide essential service like disaster relief, tutoring, food distribution, and environmental cleanup. And just to talk a little bit about AmeriCorps, in that role, you do so many different jobs. When I was an AmeriCorps member, I tutored, I delivered food, you name it, I did it in that work. It wasn't just restoring vacant lots. There was a ton of other work that went along with the AmeriCorps service that I did within the community of New York. The second reason is program closure and scale back. Many not-for-profit communities, organizations rely heavily on AmeriCorps members to sustain their programs. Budget cuts often force them to eliminate significantly reduced services. These cuts hurt us tremendously, and I know certain organizations across all 50 states. My third reason is loss of workforce pipeline. AmeriCorps acts as a stepping stone into nonprofit, government, education, and public health careers. These cuts disrupt the pipeline, limited opportunities for emerging leaders. My number 4 reason is increased strain on underserved communities. Programs that serve low-income, marginalized, and rural communities are often the hardest hit, leaving residents with even fewer resources and services. So right now, we've been hit extremely hard with these cuts, and the gardens that we manage across Trenton will definitely, take a huge loss because we're not able to provide the type of work bandwidth that we need to get the work done. So these cuts hurt us tremendously. Number 5 is stalled community development projects. Community gardens, housing rehabilitation, energy efficient upgrades, and other long-term initiatives lose continuity and manpower, delaying or ending projects entirely. So this is a real serious matter. My number 7 reason is loss of organizational capacity. AmeriCorps members often fill crucial roles such as volunteer coordinators, outreach, and data collection. That being said, that entire process is going to be long. So it's going to put a huge strain on Al to be able to get a lot of work that we look to get done in the community to make Trenton this beautiful oasis that we need to make it. It's going to take a very, very huge impact. Number 8 is decrease in federal leverage for local impact. AmeriCorps grants are typically matched by local funding. Federal budget cut reduces local investment and ripple throughout the entire ecosystem of community support. Number 9 is full-time AmeriCorps members are paid stipends and programs. Program staff are often funded by these grants. These budget cuts eliminate both members and staff positions. So please write your letters of support because they are crucial. And the last reason is undermining national service ethos. AmeriCorps forces civil engagement in public service. These budget cuts sends a message that national service is not a priority, potentially discouraging future generations from joining these services. Like I said before in the beginning, AmeriCorps was crucial to my development as a young man, as a young 19, 20-year-old man developing in New York. The scholarships, the education awards I got was able to fund my artistic endeavors. I was able to go to college, went to TCI college, got my degree in digital media arts, and I was able to further my knowledge with those grants that I got from my AmeriCorps service. So AmeriCorps really sits near and dear to my heart, and that's why I'm asking you for these letters of support to write to Congress to get Congress to release these funds. Yes, sure.
Why don't you give us a little sense of what the work that's been going on with the AmeriCorps volunteers here at Isles in the last year, you've been meeting. What kind of activities have folks been doing, and what's the impact you've seen with folks here?
Well, my team has been doing a ton of beautification work. We planted over 560 trees throughout Trenton, which will beautify Trenton, which will provide clean air to the residents of Trenton who suffer from asthma and things like that. We also have been doing a lot of soil remediation in a lot of the vacant lots. We have also been putting up a ton of raised beds in vacant lots where soil can't be used.
What are raised beds for folks?
Raised beds are normally just a big garden planter that you build using cedar wood, and you're able to put whatever you're growing inside of that raised bed so it doesn't get contaminated by the soil that's underneath it.
Which goes back to our lead problem.
Yes, we have that problem in Trenton with all the vacant lots. As you know, Trenton was a heavy industrial ceramic factory city, so a lot of the vacant lots that we're looking to build gardens on sit on bad soil, lead soil. So we had this garden initiative, which we are looking to build a ton of raised beds, to actually go into these gardens so that food that we produce and harvest for the community is not tainted with lead and is extremely healthy for our residents.
And then how about the gardens? I've been with you and the teams out in some of the gardens around the city. Who's using these gardens? What are they growing, and what does it mean for those families?
We have a mixture of diverse demographics using the gardens. We have some African Americans. We have some people actually from the continent of Africa. We have a huge Latino population. We have a huge Caribbean population. And based off that demographics, they normally grow what's in their country. So we got people from the Caribbeans that are growing callaloo, which is another form of green similar to like collard greens or kale. We have some of our Indian gardeners growing different type of beans, peanuts, and things like that. There's so many different fresh produce growing in the gardens. I mean, we got figs, we got raspberries, we have tomatoes, we got kale, we got garlic, we got onions. You name it, we growing it. We taking it back to Trenton makes it, the world takes it. So that's what we're looking to restore back in Trenton, bringing Trenton into the age of sustainability, making Trenton eco-friendly, making Trenton more green. That's where Trenton needs to be at, and the house is definitely leading the way. We're doing that with our garden initiative.
And that leads also to our ability to then do programs like dinner and movie, right?
Yep,
which
yep.
AmeriCorps folks
Yeah, which
participate
is
in. What's that about?
key So dinner movie, with Chef Pearl is, we normally take food from the garden, and we show the residents of the community how to prepare that food. So we normally run 2 workshops, every month, the first, second, the second Tuesday, pardon me, of every month, and the last Tuesday every month. And in those workshops, they are 90% plant-based, so majority of the meals Chef Pearl makes are all plant-based meals, which are extremely good. She very rarely cooks with salt, so they are dressed to really heal the people who may have diabetes or high blood pressure or cholesterol issues. You know, the meals that Chef Pearl are producing using the produce from the gardens is really tackling a major health issue that's infiltrating, which is diabetes and high levels of asthma in the community. So it's a phenomenal food program that we look to expand upon.
And there's also planting trees, which is 564 is the count now?
I want to say close to 600 trees we have planted all throughout Trenton. Catwater Park, on Stockton, on Perry Street. We just hitting up every block that needs a tree, and we're planting a tree. Our goal is to plant over 1,000 trees by the end of the year.
I know we're working with a couple other agencies to do that, and the Conservation Foundation, I believe, is leading that effort. But we don't just plant them, because there's
No,
the hard
we plant
part.
them.
That's the easy part.
That's the
isn't
easy
it?
part. That's the easy part. We also obligated to water these plants as well. So you know, these plants need to be watered at least twice a week. And with these extreme heats and these budget cuts, not having the service members that we need to get this type of work done, it puts a strain on the staff at the house. So you know, it's a lot of real work. We getting it done, but having the AmeriCorps members back in the swing of things are extremely beneficial to our development, getting work that we need to get done in the community. Any questions?
Yeah, if there are any questions for folks here or online, you can throw them out, or if you think of them as we go along, we can pull them back up here. But one of the things that are important that come out of this is, you know, the tree watering, for example, needs to go on for 2 years.
2 years. 2 years.
So the idea that, you know, this AmeriCorps support will be pulled away now, you know, puts in jeopardy all this investment that we've made to make an impact around the tree planting, which we know reduces temperatures in an environment where there aren't a lot of trees, makes for cleaner air. Trenton is only 13% of the county population, but 75% of the emergency room visits for asthma, so we know it'll help in that regard. These are smart strategies that have been put in place that unfortunately, if these budget votes go as intended, are going to disappear, and that'd be a real tragedy. So one of the things we wanted to do tonight, thank you, Otho.
Thank you.
We may pull you back up here in a minute.
No worries, I'm available.
You know, the other reason we wanted to get together tonight was to talk about, are we just going to complain, or is there something we can do? This is, in our system of government, this is not like a parliamentary system where you can have a vote of no confidence in the government, and the government, you know, falls and you get to have a new vote. This is the government we have until the elections in 2026, which means we have really 3 budgets that will largely be under their control. This budget they're voting on right now, next year's budget, and then one more budget after that. And it's important for us to get engaged and make sure, you know, one of the obvious things is reaching out to our representatives. And we wanted to make sure that folks had assistance and, you know, understood who that is and how to do that. Our representatives here in New Jersey have been pretty, at least our representatives, let's say that for our immediate area. If you're here in the Mercer County area, our member of Congress, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, has been very outspoken in opposing a lot of these cuts. Isles actually participated with her in a press conference back in April, where we talked about the cuts to HUD and the lead offices and the like, and those concerns. Things have only gotten worse since we had that press conference, unfortunately. More things getting cut. But Bonnie has always been, the Congressman Watson-Coleman has always been a steadfast and vital voice in Congress, standing up for issues that we're talking about tonight. Similarly, our two United States senators, Senator Booker and Senator Kim, have been effective and strong voices opposing these kind of cuts. You may recall Senator Booker gave a 25-hour speech on the floor of the Senate a couple months ago decrying some of these things. So it's worthwhile for us to reach out and say thank you to those folks who have been vigorous and supportive of what we're doing. And it's also worthwhile to reach out to those involved in the process who haven't. And you may not feel like it makes a lot of sense to write to President Trump or to the Republican leadership in the Congress, but it's a worthwhile thing to do. Having worked in government before and in legislative offices, when the phones ring, when the mail piles up, elected officials do take notice of that. And so we've got some correspondence, draft language if you would like to use as a guide or write your own letter. We've got letters to share with everyone tonight, and also how to contact those members of Congress. And we can email that around to folks who are online. I think, Randy, do we have everybody who's online, do we have their contact information to be able to share an email with them?
Or I can drop it in the chat, maybe.
Oh, you can drop it in the chat. That's very high tech of Laura. Hang on, why don't
I
I'll
said maybe.
maybe.
Maybe you say
All right. Well, I'll help you with that in a second. I have it in an email of mine, so I can share that with you in a second. There's some other things to try to do as well. One of the suggestions that I was thinking about this over the weekend, knowing we're going to have these gatherings and things we could do. Who do you know that lives in a state or in a district where they have Republican members of Congress, representing them? Are there folks that you can talk to? Now, this is graduate level citizenship here, because we're asking you not just to now reach out and talk to family, maybe friends, or just folks that you know that live in those districts that you might be able to reach out and talk to and say, are you following this? Are you supporting this? Were you aware, for example, that there's going to be a new tax on solar energy and wind power, as well as these other things that we've talked about here tonight, and urge them to reach out to their members of Congress. And there's another tactic to use is there's a neat website called 5 Calls. Easy to Google it up. And what's great about that is if we have a list that we can share with everybody for how to reach our members of Congress here in the area and the Republican leadership. But if you go to the 5 Calls website and just put in your zip code or your mailing address, they will connect you to your, that particular person's member of Congress and members of the Senate. So that's a great way to be able to reach out and contact people. So try that 5 Calls. How many wild and crazy digital mavens do we have with us tonight? I would not claim to be one of those myself. But that's the other place to go and have these conversations, which can be a little challenging, right? Because sometimes there are some hurtful things that get said online and in the different chat rooms and the like. But using that opportunity to, in a respectful and productive way, to communicate your views and try to share with others, get them to think about it, is another effort, that's another step that people can take to try to encourage more thoughtful consideration from our fellow Americans and what they might do to then reach out to elected officials in Washington. But those are a few ideas. There are other steps folks can take. This is, there are opportunities to go out and protest and to have your voice heard in those ways. You can certainly Google those kinds of gatherings up and see where they're taking place on a regular basis. I know there are communities that are doing it on a regular, once-a-week basis even, which is really pretty unusual. But those are a couple suggestions to share with folks. And I'm going to share with Laura an email, so we can put it up in the chat, about the addresses and the draft letters if people want to take advantage of those. Happy to open up the floor to any other questions, any other comments, or for anybody online who might want to raise a Oh, Stacy, yeah, testimonials from our scholars, partners, and parents.
Ask her to drop them in the chat if she has some that she would like us people to use. Oh, I can grab a mic and I can ask you that stuff. Stacy, if you have anything you want people to have access to, just drop it in the chat. They can use those for their letter writing. The other thing I'll say is that I did see, Kimmy, you asked this question about Booker accomplished by talking for 25 hours. I mean, for those of us who've been watching this happen, while this is still what I would consider a dire situation, we do know that the protests are working. We know that they're pausing things, that they're slowing things down, that people have had to pivot, they've had to pivot, and that lawmakers who are in the regions that are red or at least purple, have moments. And ultimately, there are going to be midterm elections. And midterm elections can change everything because if the House and the Senate, if the House and the Senate go differently in the midterm elections, we could basically freeze the government, which ultimately may be better than what's happening currently. And so, it is critical, particularly in purple or areas that could lean purple. I now see Ray just turned his camera on my face, and Ray knows how much I dislike recordings. It does matter, and that the folks who are studying this and watching it happen do know that matter, and it's getting people's civic engagement up. And ultimately, people need to be using their voices in ways that we haven't necessarily had to. We've had the luxury of not having to use our voices as much for things we care about, particularly here in New Jersey, where we've had such a strong state support in so many of these initiatives.
And it's one of the things that, talk about advanced citizenship that's taking place here, to watch how this process works in Washington. They're using right now what's called the reconciliation process. I don't want to make this a graduate level seminar on congressional budgeting, but the important part is what they're doing is avoiding using the typical channels for funding the government, so that they only have to get 50 votes in the Senate to get something passed. You've heard all the talk of filibusters and having to have 60 votes. Well, they're using this system because they can avoid having to get 60 votes. Because if they needed 60 votes, then the Democrats would have an opportunity to negotiate about things. What's going to be very important to watch as the next budget cycle goes forward is whether or not they try to use the same technique again. There's a lot of uncertainty in Washington about how they're running the budget process right now, and there is a lot of discussion among folks in Washington that they are going to try to use the same technique again next year. It offers a couple of advantages that President Trump particularly likes. The president gets to control much more of the process and only needs the 50 votes to get it passed in the Senate. And then the president has 4 years to decide how that money is ultimately spent. It's not a typical budget process, so it gives the president a lot more authority. As we've read stories, and I'm sure you've seen the articles about the ways this president is trying to do things differently, this is potentially another avenue of unique executive expansion of power. And so that's something that's important to watch and continue to monitor as we go forward. Are there any other thoughts or questions? Any other comments folks have online? I did send Laura, I did send you that email. If you want to share that list of federal contacts with everybody, and I think on that list that I sent Laura that she's going to post in the chat, that those are actual links that we put in place. And you should be able to just click that link and it will take you to how to email those officials. Tom, you had a question? Let me just hand you a mic just so folks can hear you.
Hi, my name is Tom Rust. I'm the Executive Director for the Trenton Downtown Association. And thinking through where there may be leverage, the one line on I think you were going through the HUD changes, and I saw about the Section 8, I own some property in Trenton, and thinking that whether or not the landlords understand what the coming impact is going to be,
right,
and what possible leverage, if we understand clearly what the economic impact to Trenton is going to be if we lose Section 8 here, and how many people may just be displaced and/or in court over evictions and what the economic impact is, and if they understand that, then perhaps there could be some effort made to kind of organize that group. Just a random thought.
No, that's a good comment, Tom. There are, and I think there are an increasing number of interest groups like that that are going to come together. It's one of the challenges and the flaws of how this is being done again, right? We were just Ray and I were talking out loud before we got started, and that's where folks heard the conversation about the solar and renewable cuts, right? There's so much done in secrecy so that people can't organize. And that's why it's all the more important for us to be as vigilant as we can be, given the limitations of how the process is unfolding. But you're right, that's an interesting group to talk about. There are certainly, and there's been, I think, good conversation about the impact of eliminating the supports for EVs and for battery charging, because there are all these plants that are being built based on what President Biden and the Congress had passed to create those plants, and now these half-constructed buildings are going to potentially be unfunded. So that's another group that people are trying to reach out to and get mobilized. So it's how can we think as individuals and in our communities, how can we build coalitions and get folks interested enough to stand up and say no and reach out to their members. So that's a good group.
As a follow-up, not to this, as a follow-up, not to the Section 8, but on the solar credits, is there any understanding whether or not that's going to be a rollback of that legislation? Because that would have really significant impact on both commercial as well as residential projects. Having spent some time there, I understand what the economic models look like and what that impact would be. Are people really, one, do we understand it yet at this point, and two, the economic impact for those investors in renewable energy is going to be enormous.
Exactly. I don't know how that's playing out. The votes are literally taking place tonight as we sit here. It's hard to know whether or not there's a real initiative here to try to pull this provision out of the bill, or whether this is just a vote that is going to get, give those couple senators a chance to say, well, we tried. Sorry, it didn't work. And they have something to say to their constituents back in Iowa. There's 2 Iowa senators where, as I said, 60% of their energies come from renewable. So, we'll have to see. Stay tuned.
And well, I know that this is Laura speaking from Iowa. Well, I know that in the big votes, nobody is voting against the president on his side of the aisle. There are small wins that have been happening, and so there are advocates at the programming level, at the federal level, for things like youth bill that have not gone away, for other areas, for building infrastructure, for some small business work. So it's important for us to get our voices out there and to be able to advocate and have our, as Sean said, friends or colleagues or moms who live in the regions that are maybe not as democratic leaning, to really use their voices, because it is going to matter. It has mattered in small measure, and those small measures are, stopping from what could be like even more devastating in those moments. So,
Sally, do you have a question?
Sure. Sally Lane, I'm a city resident. It seems to me, given that the Senate is passing the bill tonight or tomorrow, and then the House is passing it.
We'll see.
Well, yes, but so far they all cave. So,
yes.
I'd just like to step aside from what I think is a done deal and say that how you water the trees in the near future is a great promotional thing, because this bill is so vast and attacks so many things, nobody can get their head around it. But if we as a community make a huge effort to say, see all these new trees, they're going to die because of.
Right, right.
And start figuring out, I don't know what the watering mechanism is, I mean, how you do it.
You gotta do it by hand, with a truck and a hose.
Okay, but I mean, then I think it's Trenton Council of Civic Associations, it's neighborhoods, it's, you know, I think we should really spend some time thinking how to make this something, because people can understand that you've just planted a tree that will die. 580 of them. And that's solid. I mean, that's something everybody can understand and people can, you know, it's not going to be easy, but I would.
Right, it's a very tangible.
It totally
and,
is.
You know, right in front of your face kind of
Yep, and
impact. And the withering tree that might result. It's complicated watering these trees, right?
Yes.
I mean,
It's a lot of water.
It's very labor intensive, and one of the things I've been trying to develop with my team is come up with some alternative ways to where we can water the trees and get more so the youth and the community involved to support us as well. So, for example, I give an example. If you are a resident that live on a block that has 4 trees that we have to plant, you know, we're looking to partner with certain residents to say, hey, can you just water these 4 plants twice out of the year? You know, it's not going to really raise your
Yes.
water bill too much, and hopefully, within that partnership, they'll gain access to, to our partnership gardens, and have first access at our garden harvest and things like that. So kind of make it kind of like a barter system to where, it can't always be about money. But hey, if you water the trees, you can come on to Plymouth Street, you can get a box of cherries, you can get some fresh produce, just one hand wash the other, 2 hand wash the face is what we're trying to create within the neighborhood so that way we have the support to get that type of work done.
Ray, didn't our neighborhood water the trees? I mean, I know it's a tiny drop in the bucket, but if you start, I mean, how many neighborhoods?
It's a lot, and that's the hard part, Sally, about how you translate this, right? 580 trees, it's keeping them going for 2 years. We keep
I
that all going.
understand, but if you
And
don't
that's-
do it right away, you don't have to talk about 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so I mean, if these
It's a tangible thing
Mhm.
that as people understand that this stupid bill has, set aside all kinds of norms, it's a tangible thing people could do.
And people want to do this.
And people,
Right.
there aren't a whole lot of people who are against trees. So I just think it's worth saying, how do we organize this quickly and make a lot of noise about it?
I agree. I mean, we definitely have to get the residents of Trenton involved. That's work that's going to have to be done on ours ends in terms of how do we get the neighbors involved. For example, are we providing hoses? Are we providing watering buckets to tenants that say, hey, I don't mind helping out. I just need a 50-foot hose, and I'll do it. I'm retired or I'm at home. I'll get my son to make a part of his chores. That's the kind of relationship and communication that we want to create within the neighborhood to get everybody on board to support us, because it's going to just take more than hours to keep these
Totally,
trees alive.
but you got to start it now,
I would totally agree.
instantly, and
We can help you.
Please,
in different neighborhoods, you'll have different, but I really think we need to pull together a group of people to discuss seriously.
I totally agree. And
I don't know how you get the National Guard buffaloes, water buffaloes, right? Well,
You
The
don't.
big trailers that have the water containers on the back.
No, you don't anymore, right? 'Cause
well, right, I
it's
get that National Guard, but, it's that kind of thing that I think we have to start having a conversation about. How do you do, and the county needs to be here. I'm wherever, but I mean,
No, it's a way to galvanize people in the face of these cuts to figure out not only how to address the challenge, but to highlight what's good, what's at risk.
And the individuals who start doing it have to be putting it on Facebook, have to be,
Right.
you know, telling all their neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, I
Good
think,
thought, very good thought.
I think also we are in this moment where collaboration is just, it's more than a nice thing, right? It's critical. And so at a time where nonprofits might have been fighting over resources, look, there's no resources anyway. The only resources we have are ourselves right now. And so how do we think and work together to make that happen? And we saw great examples of that downtown this weekend with Art All Night and then coming all the way down March Street, and you know, the good work that TDA is doing, the good work we're doing, the good work that Artworks is doing, and it's the same thing with the trees, right? There are groups of young and folks from the community who care about those things, and they're happy to go out. I mean, you know, I laugh to myself, they have a golf cart in Lawrenceville, that they let folks drive around the town to water their trees. I'm like, all we need is one golf cart. Somebody would love to drive a golf cart around this place, right? Like that kind of stuff is feasible. And they load up the water in the back and then they're spraying trees. And so, you know, you're right. These are the moments, and we hope that conversations like this will galvanize efforts to start to say, well, I'm looking at my friend right here, and then maybe we can get a civic association meeting on the calendar where we can start to have some of these conversations with the different communities. Kimmy, I saw your hand has been up for a while.
Good call, thank you, Laura. I couldn't see that.
Wait, hold on, I can't hear you though. Let me see if I can get you on here. Go ahead, try again.
Hang on one second. I can hear you through the iPad here. Let's see if we put you up here. Try it again, Cindy.
No.
A little louder? Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and I can hear you, so I'll repeat your question or your comment.
One of the leaders
That's what I
in
call it.
the New Jersey Tree Foundation's newer program in North Jersey program to plant trees. He's a crew leader. You know, Sally, you have a really good idea, but I think that it's worth noting that people are going to die of hunger and weather exposure. So there are really more serious problems than trees. But for some people who are not accustomed to hardship, talking about comfortable white Americans, it's easier to relate to a tree withering and dying than a neighbor doing the same thing. So, you know, I think it's, you know, it's a good point that I'm not sure what your name is, the man who's standing at the podium.
Sean.
Don. Don's point, it can galvanize communities to act, that people can build friendships, and you know, it can be a pathway to creating community solutions that involve people at different economic strata.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, yeah.
I really appreciate that. Our founder knows.
I also have a question.
Hold on, Kimmy, I need you to, go ahead, start again with your question.
Is it worthwhile to organize visits to our elected representatives? You guys are very lucky down here in Trenton to have Bonnie Watson Coleman, but up here we have Josh Godwin, who votes with Republicans more often than he does with Democrats, even though he's a Dem. And honestly, you know, I'm like saying to myself, people should go into his office every day demanding, what are you doing to stand up for the rights of the democratic rights of citizens in the U.S.? You know, you're an elected Democratic congressman. Do something.
Yes,
Is it worthwhile?
it is worthwhile. I'll tell you it's worthwhile. I also will tell you that you probably won't meet with Josh. You will meet with the staffers. But
Yeah, I know.
for those, well, the lesson about this, though, is that as a person who worked as a staffer, they have way more power than we let on to them have. That the staffers in the office have a lot of control and power. They feed the information they want to feed to the representative, and they are able to sway things. And it's important to talk to them. It absolutely is. It's important to talk to them. I would say if you can get there, you should go. You should go to your local office, talk to the folks who are in New Jersey every day. They want to see you. They don't want to be there alone. They like to see their constituents. And we can thank them for the things they're doing right, because many of them are doing some right things, and ask them to act in areas that we want them to act in. And you know, a good example of this, we spent a lot of time on the Hill talking about the CDC rollbacks and cuts, and we were able to give some language that wound up in testimony later by our legislators. Like, that alone is important. Let them hear the stories, let them understand what it means for you and your friends and your neighbors. So all of that is important, and I think critical, and I do think it makes a difference. I'm going to stand by it making a difference and believe that it makes a difference, and it will make more of a difference if we get to midterms and we can do something differently, where we can turn some of the seeds and let folks do that.
And Kimmy, I wanted to mention one other thing, Kimmy.
I have one more question. Is it like, you know, when we talk to our neighbors and friends, how much should we be trying to spark them to action? How much should we be saying to talk to this person because they're completely on the opposite side and nothing I'm going to say is going to move them? You know, like how should we be trying to organize within our own circles?
I think we learned a lot from the Newark Mayor's campaign, that we have a lot of distance to run with folks who may appear apathetic. Are you going to fight with somebody who's a right-wing, 100% Trump supporter and get them to move their ideas? No, but you're not going to get me to move my idea either, and I'm 100% liberal. So, you know, that is what it is, right? But there are a lot of people in New Jersey in the middle who haven't voted before, who haven't exercised their right to vote, who don't use their voice, who don't know how to communicate with their legislators, who you could say, come with me, let's go talk to him at the office, let's go tell him what's going on for you. Just tell your story. People want to talk about themselves, and that's what the elected officials need to hear.
And if you speak to folks in the office, they keep track of that. You know, they keep, you know, when there are big issues that are percolating and getting talked about around the country, and congressional offices are getting phone calls, they'll keep a tally of, you know, how many people called, who's for and who's against, and members will call back to the home office and say, you know, what's going on? How loud is it? Because what happens is the office staff gets so inundated when these things happen, they can't get anything else done. And the member will be like, well, what do you mean I don't have this briefing ready? Or that I said, well, the phones are ringing off the hook, everyone's calling. And then they want to know why. So it's absolutely, to Laura's point, you know, engaging with your neighbors, and especially folks, you know, one of the things that President Trump was particularly effective at was getting folks who hadn't participated in the process to get involved. And, you know, that's a way, you know, that can go both ways, and people should be doing that. I wanted to also just address your earlier comment, Kimmy. You know, we've been talking about things that are impacting aisles in particular, so that's why we're talking about the trees, we're talking about the lead, we're talking about some of the other work that we do and the work of the AmeriCorps volunteers, because those are things that we're doing that have been impacted and cut. To your point, there are people who are going to suffer dramatically because of what happens with this budget. We know that's going to happen. When you look at the cuts that are coming to the heating assistance and the cooling assistance programs, they will have consequences. This summer, where people need, we see more and more with these 100-degree days, how imperative it is to have, you know, an air conditioner or access to a cool place. We have for decades recognized the importance of having a warm home in the winter, and that also is being jeopardized by the cuts that are being talked about. So, you know, I am with you there on where these impacts are coming, where they're going to hit, and it is going to be devastating for a lot of people. And our heart goes out to those folks. Similarly to the stories we can read about what's happened since USAID was eliminated, you know, in an illegal fashion. You know, the Congress now has voted on party lines to
support the president's decision, so that's essentially ratifying that. But we know there's been, thousands and thousands of pounds of food sitting in docks waiting to get shipped to Africa that are not going because those programs have been cut. And that will lead to lives lost. And you can just read those stories as well. So,
And I'll just add that the tree planting situation, for me, when I think about even sort of Isle's origin story, our founder would say that the community gardens are a way to galvanize the neighborhood. They are a way to get people to talk to each other and to fight other issues that are happening. And you can see that in neighborhoods that have community gardens where members of the community are out there together. They're also watching after each other's kids and grandkids, and they know each other's names and they know their families' names, and we know that violence is reduced in those areas. And so, sure, absolutely. Well, I would argue trees do help heat islands, which are going to be greater affected by us not being able to have cooling systems. We can do that in the long term. But also, if you're outside watering a plant with a neighbor, which is actually not a scary thing to do, to water a plant, you can have some of the more scary conversations and hopefully get people to use their voice differently. And that ultimately can be a goal for many of us. The same way as when we were out on the street for Art All Night this weekend, we were talking about what this means for arts programs in the school, for mental health services, because we were there together looking at art and having those conversations. So, it's a mechanism for dialogue.
Indeed. Indeed. Any closing comments from anyone, either here in the room or online? We're grateful for everybody who's come out and joined us here, who's joined us online. We're trying to start this conversation and figure out how we can, as a community, come together. I think we've seen the dynamite idea come around how to approach this in a very tangible way, with the community coming together to try to water these trees. So we'll take that idea and work on that and think of others. And as you have other ideas, please reach back out to us and let us know. It is going to take all of us standing together and working together and caring together about what's going on in our community and communities around the country to make a difference here. And part of what some folks in Washington want is for all of us to get discouraged, and for all of us to give up, and for all of us to just go away. And the important thing for all of us to do is to come together and work together in community. Because through our common unity, we can make that impact and make that change. So, thank you for being with us tonight, and appreciate everyone's engagement and thoughtfulness, and we'll look forward to carrying the conversation forward. Thank you.
Thank you.